Hello, everyone. Welcome to Show and Tell with Chelle. I'm Chelle, and coming up, I have an award-winning writer-director standing by who's been in the film and television industry for many years. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. Joining me now is award-winning writer-director Deborah Markowitz, with many titles under her belt, including The Only Woman in the World, A Couple of Guys, and The Waiting Room. Deborah is making a name for herself in the film and television industry. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm so happy to be here today.
So happy to have you. Thank you. All right, so let's start at the beginning. Can you explain how you first got involved in the film and television industry and at what point you became a writer and director?
Well, I've always been a writer. I used to write poetry when I was younger. I had a couple of poems published. I wrote a song, which I never did anything with. And about 33 years ago, I created and ran through 4 administrations, the Nassau County Film Commission. And then probably about, I'm going to say 20 years ago, I wrote my first novel. And then I ended up writing a trilogy, the Karmic Wind trilogy,
That's
which
wonderful.
was Nathan in the Rain, Sarah and Caleb, and Karmic Wind. And then probably around 8, 9 years ago, I started doing some casting for a couple of directors. And after I did my first short and first feature, I went, I think it's time to see what makes directors crazy. And so I wrote and directed The Last Taxi Driver, starring Robert Clahessy from Blue Bloods and Deb Twist from Kick-Ass. And I'm like, all right, I don't need to do that again. And 3 weeks later, I decided I cast a film for somebody else, and then I decided to direct my film called Leaving, which Last Taxi Driver and Leaving are both on Amazon Prime. And then I just couldn't stop.
Yeah, it just keeps going and going.
Yeah, so I've directed for other people, and I've written for other people. Part of me thinks I should concentrate maybe more on writing for a while because I have a lot of stories I have to finish. But yeah, so that's kind of how that all started.
That's wonderful. That's fabulous. So you've been very busy with several projects in the works. Your feature, The Only Woman in the World, is almost completed. What was your inspiration and vision for this movie?
Well, my first thought was that I had done several shorts and I wanted to make a feature. So I had written features for other people, and I decided to write something that's very timely and very topical for our industry. And it was about an up and coming director, female director, who kind of gets played by one of the actors that she casts. And it just brings, it started out as a short called Date with a Narcissist. And I said, you know what, I think that this should be a feature, because people are like, oh, I got to tell you my story. I got to tell you my story.
Right.
And it just, became like something I really wanted to do, because we didn't have a lot of money and we wanted to make a feature. We trained almost our entire crew as we were doing this.
Wow.
So yeah, and I wouldn't really recommend doing that. We have the film done. Clearly, people got way better as they started learning more, but they were learning on the job. So there's some things we're cleaning up in post now, but it looks pretty good, and I'm happy with the actors. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But it's been a long journey. It's been almost 3 years from writing to filming, and then even longer to get to post. So in a way, the pandemic has been kind to me in the way that I had 8 projects going into the pandemic, and I have 2 that are almost complete, 2 left that are almost done. So that was a good
But you did it and you're doing it, and that's great. And everybody has to start somewhere. I started in the film and television industry at the very bottom as a volunteer. And in 6 months, I was offered a job at a TV station. And that's how. So we all start, and learning on the job is how you get started and how you learn. Yeah. Now, I know you're very proud of your film, The Waiting Room, which you wrote and directed. Not only was it a 72-hour challenge, but you filmed it in 1 day. Yes. 1 day.
That was fun.
And I'm sure it was. And you've won many awards all over the world for this film. I got to know, what's the 72-hour challenge, and how did you manage to shoot the entire film in 1 day?
Well, I had gotten contacted by Jennifer Giles, who I had met at different film festivals. We'd won awards at the same time. And she's an Emmy Award-winning actress. And she had been wanting to work with me. So she said, there's this green room challenge. She said, and would you like to direct this for us? And I said, well, as long as you raise the money, because I don't do that. And I said, do you have a script yet? She said, I have these three actors. I said, all right, do you have a script? She said, I don't. I said, all right, well, if I can bring in two of the actors I want to work with, I'll write it for you. And we had to wait for the theme to come out. And but I wrote it in 2 hours. And
2 hours. My
yeah,
goodness.
and it was fun. So I sent it to her, and she calls me back. She goes, I don't know if it's just me, but I think this is really good. And I said, well, let's send it to the other people. And they loved it. And it's basically the story of a woman who is waiting in the afterworld for her husband to come meet her. But when he comes up with his second wife. And it's the confrontation. It's the confrontation that they have. I love this movie. It stars Jennifer Giles, and also Kieran Sheehan is one of Broadway's Phantom of the Operas. So he's from Broadway. Also Justin Wilson, who does a lot of, I'm going to say Blacklist. He's been in a lot of television shows. Also Heather Britton O'Scanlan, who's done a lot of stuff on the indie circuit, and Noelle Diane, who's been in almost every one of my films. And we had so much fun. They all got there from upstate and New Jersey and whatever on a snowy day, the day before the blizzard. And we got it done in one day, and it was a lot of fun. This is one of the film projects that just gave me joy almost from beginning to end. It was lots of laughs, lots of crying, because it also is very sad in places. And we submitted it, and it just started winning all over the place. It's been in Scotland, it's been in England, it's been in, I think we played in Spain and France, and it always seems to, won me a lot of awards. So that's kind of cool.
It also brought you around the world a lot too, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Absolutely did. It was fun.
That's fabulous. Unbelievable. One day, an entire film.
And then to have to do all the post work so quickly that I wasn't sleeping because
don't tell me that was done in one day as well.
Well, that was, it seemed almost one day each, from the post sound to even the scoring. Wow. And I had to call up a composer. It wasn't the composer I first hired, because the first pass he came through with, and he was doing it for free. He knew we didn't have a lot of money. It just didn't really feel right to me. And I said, I don't have time to talk you through this. I said, but I have somebody I've worked with before, and I got to move on. And I had contacted the composer, Eros Cartacini from Italy, and I've worked with him before. And I said, Eros, can you do this by tonight? And he said, yeah, fine. And it came back perfect.
Yeah. I love it. That is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable.
Yeah. It was a blast. Definitely.
I'm sure it was. I could see you gleaming from ear to ear. I would love to see this. I have to see it.
I'll send you a link later.
Mm-hmm. That would be great. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Now, writer, director, producer John Andrew Gallagher was a New York City-based filmmaker for nearly 30 years, who unfortunately passed away last October. Deborah, you're going to be directing one of John's last films. What an honor. How did that come about?
Well, John, it's a funny thing, because John and I actually have a history that I didn't even realize we had until a couple of years ago. When I was with the film office, and John was doing two of his really breakout indie films. One of them was called The Deli with Michael Imperioli, and it's got 5 million names in it. David Debbie Mazur, and like everybody else in the world was in this film. And then he did one, I think it was called Blue Moon, and they had called the office for locations, and I had help with locations. Didn't really know who he was, didn't really remember. And then many years ago, I had my movie Leaving at a film festival, and John had a movie, I think, called We Remember, and we both won Best Director awards. And as we're talking, he's asking me about the actors I'm using. He loves my actors. And we start talking about his films. I'm like, wait, you did that? I did locations for those. And he goes, yeah, I know, I remember you. I'm like, but I've done so many thousands of them that I didn't realize who he was. Mm-hmm. And, we started becoming friendly. We honored him at life at the Long Island International Film Expo a couple of years ago. And when he passed away, the producer, Linda Collins, had called me and said that John had written this. He wanted to do it. I know he respected you a lot, she said, and I know he would be honored if you would direct it for us. So, I read it and I said, okay, I'd like to do that. Actually, that would mean a lot to me, to have our names attached like that, because we always talked about working together. Yeah. And, just from different planes this time. So, yeah, so we've been working on that. I just changed the script a little bit and, hire the other actress and got the locations, and we're going to have soon Zoom, basically a Zoom rehearsal. And it'll be nice.
So you're in kind of pre-production. Is that where you are about?
We are in pre-production. Yeah.
Okay.
We're in production. We're going scouting. I think it's next week, just to,
Wonderful.
For the DP to see, to see the location and the production designer and the makeup person. I want to take pictures of everything, because we're trying to, because of COVID, everybody's doing 2 jobs. So usually my husband, John Marine, who's also my business partner, was going to shoot it. And he said, you know what, I can do COVID, but I can't do, the COVID compliance. I can't do that and shoot, but I can do sound and shoot. So everybody's doing 2 jobs. We're actually going to use 2 cameras, but they're going to be the whole G&E department. And I hired an AD who I said, you're also going to be scripty, because we got to keep this down. We could have more people, but I want to really keep it safe for everybody. So, we'll have enough people to spread out all over the house and get it done and do it as safely as possible. So, it's going to be an interesting day, but we have a really great crew, and I'm looking forward to doing this for John.
Well, you are shooting this in more than one day, yes?
No, one day, but it's only a 5-minute movie. Yeah, this is only a 5-minute movie, so we can do this. Yeah,
I was going to jump out. My heart was going to pound out of a 2-hour movie. And one day, Deborah, you're a miracle worker.
That would be a lot longer. He did have a feature he was working on, and I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I don't think it had the funding, so I don't know if it's going to happen or not. It may, it may still, but this is something at least we knew we could get done, and then he'll have a film on the festival circuit next year, so that would make me happy.
That's so wonderful. Oh, that is terrific. I'm so happy. And I'm sure he's probably happy wherever he may be. And that's just terrific that this all came about and you'll be directing one of his, films.
Yeah, I'm very touched by that.
I'm honored. I mean, that is such an honor.
Yes.
Being able to direct one of his films.
Absolutely.
So what insights, tips, or advice can you give to people wanting to get into the business?
So much. First of all, like you said, you volunteered at first, and I know that there's people saying don't ever work for free. Well, there's times to work for free, and it's when you don't know anything, because even though you're putting in your time, you're getting value because you're learning what to do. And if they were going to pay somebody, they'd pay somebody who already knew what to do. So I started. I worked on my several first films for free. When I cast. The first movie I cast was My Cross to Bear. He was looking for a certain actor that he knows I know. And when I read the script, I said, that's not the actor you want. And I mentioned several other people. And he said, would you be my casting director? And I said, well, I haven't done it before, but you know what? What better way to learn? So I did that, and I wasn't going to do it again, because you know how much work that is. I know you've done it as well, right?
Yes.
And I'm like 3 weeks done with that. And then I get a call from the woman who runs, Kathy Cato, who runs the Queens World Film Festival, and she said, I know a writer and a director who has a great script. Would you read it? She needs a producer and a casting director. I'm like, all right, I wasn't going to do it again, but I'll read the script. And I'm 10 pages in, and I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever read. And the writer called me and said, would you? And I said, you had me at the first flashback. And then I ended up casting and producing Living with the Dead, a love story by Christine Vertugian, which is just such a beautiful movie. And then I wasn't going to do it again until I decided to direct. But it's like working for free for the first couple of movies. I really got to start to learn to work with other people and what the different positions were, and really got to learn a tremendous amount.
And you're networking, right? And you're networking.
Oh, networking, absolutely.
It's a fabulous networking tool.
Yeah. So it's work for free because you have to learn, behave on set. Just don't talk
protocol.
Yeah, protocol. Don't talk too much. Ask questions, feel out when the time's right. Don't bother people when they're in the middle of something very serious. Show up on time. I don't care if it's free. If you promise you're going to do something, your word is everything.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so I think the other advice there is really your reputation and your real reputation, your integrity is gold. So if people know, if they contact me, whatever I say I'm going to do, unless there's some huge tragedy in the world, it's getting done. If I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And so your word is very important. And there's a lot of jealousy in this industry, and a lot of people are, and don't get involved with that. The truth always comes out. So if somebody says something about you, and I've had that happen, eventually it will come out, and they'll get whatever it is that they've been sending out. I'm a big believer, whatever you send out, it's going to come back to you. So be honest, that there's nobody who can say that I lied about anything that I would have done, and that's so important, because if you work for me, anybody can screw up, anybody can mess up. I mean, we're not perfect beings, but if you throw somebody else under the bus because you don't want to take responsibility, I don't want you back on my set. We're a team, so we have to trust each other. So it's do what you say you're going to do. Honesty is extremely important. And if you say you want to take something on and find out you can't, tell somebody. Don't just not do it, because I've seen that happen so many times. People get excited. I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. And then at the last minute, they haven't done it. And then you're kind of screwed. But if you can't do it, say, hey, look, I thought I could. Give the person time to get somebody to help you, So we all have bad years. We all have things that go on. And if you are true to your word and you're very honest about what you're doing, people will forgive you, and give you another shot. But I've had people say, don't ever tell somebody you're sick. Don't ever tell anybody how old you are. Don't ever, because nobody will work with you. I'm like, well, then maybe we don't want to work with them.
Exactly. Why would we want to work with someone like that? Really?
Exactly. It's you don't have to advertise things maybe, but at the same time, if there's a reason you can't do something, you gotta let people know. You gotta be honest about it.
Yeah. And another thing is what I've learned, and I haven't done it myself, but I've run into people working on major feature films where they would talk about the director themselves behind their back at the crafty services, or they would talk about someone in the grip department, or they would, saying bad things about them. Mm-hmm. Little did they know it might be a relative of maybe the lead actor or the director. Mm-hmm. And here you are blabbing all around set, putting someone down, and you don't really know the person. Don't ever talk about somebody to anyone on set. Keep your mouth shut.
Oh, yeah,
that watch who you talk to.
Yeah, that happened on one set of a movie that I cast and produced that my husband AD'd, and they hired a new crew. The director hired a new crew for that, and they were just taking forever, and it was just crazy. And one of the team members said to somebody else that just take your time because we'll get overtime. He didn't realize that was the director's cousin.
Oh.
So you have to be careful about that stuff, but you're right. It gets around, and people don't want somebody who's going to be a problem.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but if you don't know someone personally, you shouldn't be saying anything bad about them anyway. I have people coming up to me asking me, well, oh, you've worked with that one, you worked with this one, you worked with that one. That one I heard is a blah, 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 or a blank, blank, blank. And this, I said, if you don't know the person, you haven't worked with the person, and you're not a personal friend of the person, who are you to say anything about this person? Everything you're hearing is hearsay.
Yes. Well, I'm all for, if there's somebody I want to work with and I have any questions, I will call somebody they've worked with and say, how were they? Would you work with them again? Because and that's why most of the people I've worked with have been amazing, because, if it's just celebrities, and I won't go into names, but somebody I work with, I had no problem with. And then they started blowing up on sets. And the first time they did that, I said, I won't work with them again. I said, because there's no, and I won't go around bad mouthing them, but at the same time, I just know I don't want that energy in my projects.
Of course.
So, yeah. So you have to be careful. Like you said, you have to be careful with what the hearsay is, because, the media drags people out and tries to make a spectacle out of everybody.
Exactly.
Especially for a woman, you can be called
Uh-huh.
all kinds of things when you just want something done right. And if you're a male, you wouldn't be called the same thing, so you have to understand that. But most, I gotta say, 95% of the people I've worked with have been awesome. They've really been great and hardworking, and so you learn everything you can. Oh, another piece of advice: don't ever pretend you know something you don't know. If you don't know,
That's a very good piece of advice.
don't do
That
that.
seriously is.
Yeah, because I think that everybody can learn, and I do know somebody who did that and it worked out really well in his favor, but most people it does not.
No.
Because if I'm depending on you and you mess something up, my whole movie can be messed up, and
Exactly.
I can't have that. So
No.
that's always an interesting thing. But there's just be a good person. I know that somebody just said something recently about don't be an asshole. I've been saying that since my very first movie. I want to get no asshole rule t-shirts. Everybody who's on set gets
to purchase one.
yeah, I mean, it's not, I have worked on some union stuff, but mostly it's been the actors union, not necessarily all of the crew. But it's a small indie set. You're all going to have to do multiple things. If you see something in the way somebody could trip on, move it. I mean, you can't do that on union set. Only certain people.
No.
Only certain people can do that. But
Exactly.
on non-union set, we're all in it together. Who's geez, a cup of coffee before it falls. Let me move it. Let me do. You see something, just take care of it. Just it's we're all in it together. It makes it very much like a family when you're working on a project. And so you're all there to help each other. And there's people who say the story is without a good story, you don't have anything. Well, that's true. But without a good editor, you still don't have anything. But without good actors, you still don't have anything. So as much as everything is the most important altogether is what makes the movie, every person who's on that set is either going to add to or take away from. And if you're really lucky, everybody's there to add to it. So you can't, the director will be the one who's getting all the credit. And we deserve the credit for knowing the people to hire to make it look as good as it does. So, I mean, you can't, you find a good crew, just like don't lose them, because they will just be your soulmates through this industry. And sometimes you have 2 or 3 or 4 crews, as you move along. But the people who understand your vision, I mean, that's everything if you're a writer and director.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've worked with DPs and said, okay, here's the script. And he would immediately, or she would immediately come out and go, okay, I see this. And I'm like, yes. It's like, I didn't even have to say it. And you knew exactly what I wanted. Those people are gold.
That is the best type of people to work with.
Yes.
They were always one step ahead of you. You're thinking, I want a cup of coffee, and there it is before you even get to that type of person.
I forget going home from my first set, I think it was a 7-day shoot. And I'm sitting there going, there's nobody here to bring me my slippers. Because I was a producer, there's nobody here to bring me coffee. Not that I even would be the kind of person, get me this, but no, a great AD will automatically make sure they send somebody up, what do you need? Because you're focused. I mean, you're concentrated. They want you to be comfortable. But I just remember going, oh man. And I knew after my first movie, as hard as it was, that pretty much, I always have the story that even though I had a 9-to-5 that I loved and liked, that after doing my first movie, it's like, there's no comparison,
no turning back.
Yeah, no turning back. It was like in my blood, and I'll be doing this till I'm in a walker and whatever, or
That's
more,
fabulous.
or more, But I love it, and you've been in it quite a while yourself. So
I've been in it over 20 years. I love it. It's such a tough industry, as you said before.
It is. Yeah.
Super duper long hours. Even travel time from to and from, that adds on to the hours, and it's just a tough industry, but you gotta love it. You gotta love what you're doing.
Yes.
If you don't be in the industry. Do something else that you love more.
Oh, and the hardest thing, if just thinking of more advice, the hardest thing to do, I think, for anybody in the industry is try to keep your ego out of it.
That's a big one.
Yeah, and take feedback, because if you want to make a movie, make a movie. And even if you use actors that are not experienced or whatever, and it doesn't come out good, understand it's a learning process. You don't have to show it to anybody. Just do it to learn, and the next time learn. But there's people who do one movie and say, that's it, I'm great. Why didn't I get into Sundance? And, I know. And first Taxi Driver, Sorry, my dog. The Last Taxi Driver.
Chiming in.
The Last Taxi Driver. I submitted to all the top film festivals. I'm like, this is just, it looks so good. And it got into, I think it was Holly Shorts it got into.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I think it was in actually a couple of, but it didn't get into a lot of them. And I was like, well, I don't understand. It's so good. It looks so good. And it does look really good. This is not really much of a story. It's just kind of a fun little piece. But so then the next one, I didn't submit to quite as many, although it still was in the waiting list for, I think, Flickr's. A couple of, well, actually several of my movies have gotten into at least one. But some of them I know I spent $1,500 on. It's a cute movie, but it's not that quality because I can kind of tell, you know, what's going to go there and what's not. But I see people, and I understand the first movie because you're just so proud of yourself usually that you just maybe see it a little better than it is. And then you have to learn to take feedback, but then you still have to retain your voice. So that's a difficult thing to differentiate sometimes because especially if you're an artist, you probably have a fragile, somewhat ego. And like I had to get to the point where I know a lot of really good writers. I will go to these 4 or 5 filmmaker writers when I've done something for feedback. Some I'll take, some I won't. But so you have to understand what's just not their style, but that's your voice. You know, but at the same time, and I'm going to bring up Elias Plagianos, who will always pick one thing and go, you know, if you just did this and it changes the whole movie for the better. He like always has that one suggestion, you know, and you know, when you hear it, you're like, that's it. I know I can listen to him. Just for example, my movie Chosen, it was written by Shari Umansky Goldstein, and I directed it for her and cast it for her, and stars Kathy Moriarty and Arash Mokhtar. And we did the movie, and Elias watched it. He goes, you know, but when they look out the window, if you just put some stock footage there, he goes, I think the audience will buy it. And I'm like, let me see. And once I did, I'm like, oh, yes. Yes, because he looks out the window and the light comes in, so you know what he's seeing. But when you add the stock footage, you actually see like the Vatican and everything in the background, and we have moving footage, so it looks real. And I'm like, that made all the difference, you know. So yeah, you have to talk to people who know what they're doing, people who know how to give you advice, not based on whether something their style or not, or you know, or their genre. If they don't like the genre, you know, you can't really bash a film if you don't like the genre. You know, you're not going to like it ever. So it's listening to that, and I also know some people are great writers, and one of them I was in a funk last year because I'm like, I'm never going to be as good as him. I'm just never going to be as good. Why am I even doing this? I'm never going to be as good as him. And then it just, somebody said something to me about my voice, and I said, you know what? I know I have like a fan base in Florida for my books, you know, they're just this group of people. I had a book signing and people like out the door. And are they the best written? No, but the story touches people. And so you always have to have that balance between, you can be the best technical person in the world, and maybe I might find your things boring because it's just, to me, it's the heart is what matters. So if you can grab my heart, even if I know, all right, that should be different or that should be different, it doesn't matter, you know? So it's keeping that balance, and that's a hard thing to do. You know, I'm working on it all the time. I'm getting better, but I'm working on it all the time.
That's really good. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you, and I wish you a lot of continued success in the coming years. And I look forward to following. You're welcome. And I look forward to following up with you in the near future.
Sounds good.
It sounds great. And I look forward to that.
All right. Thank you so much. Anybody wants to see any of my trailers or find out where my films are screening, my website is intentionfilmsandmedia.com. And then they can see some of the trailers for some of my films. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I'll be in touch.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
And that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed my interview with the lovely and talented writer-director, Deborah Markowitz. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.